Welcome into a special edition of the Patriots Hub Podcast. I'm Alex Barth from 98.5 thesportshub.com, joined by David Andrews, who will be joining us this year for Patriots breakdowns and look-aheads. David, super looking forward to talking football with you this year.
Yeah, I'm glad I get to still talk football with people that care and are interested in football. And, it was a different day yesterday and different day this morning, breaking down film from a different angle and thought process and what you were actually looking at. It was it's definitely not as fun watching it on a laptop versus with having a clicker in hand. And it's the same view, but we have a lot more information, down and distance, yardage, time on the clock, situation. You just get a lot more information, which I definitely did miss watching the film a little bit this morning.
They must sell the clicker somewhere. You must be able to find one.
I was
Amazon
thinking about
it.
I was thinking about, if I could buy a clicker, because those clickers are just so you can skip, rewind. It's just easy. And I don't know, there's something about having that clicker in your hand and a cup of coffee in the other hand early morning watching tape. That makes me sound like I want to coach. I don't know if I want to do that yet, because then, I watched it for an hour and a half, and then I was done,
right.
Versus doing it all
You're
day.
not doing cut-ups. And this and that. No,
and I'm not responsible to fix the problems, thank God. So,
well, we're going to talk about some of those. I am curious, though, and we talked about it a little bit off the air, but I thought it was really interesting perspective. Watching the film this morning as somebody who's going to come on the air and talk about the game versus watching it as a player, how was that process different for you?
Yeah, I think as a player, when I'm watching tape, especially, let's say, post-game tape,
right.
One, I'm not trying to spend tons of time on it because it moves like that. And, it's like, all right, we got to get this corrected, and we got to get on to the Dolphins this week. But, when you were watching it, like after a game, I would go in, look at, obviously see how I did, what I can get better at, see what we did, what we could get better at as an offensive line, really. And then kind of look at the major issues. Because one thing I found is you don't want to be sitting in those meetings and a play come up that was not a successful play because of you guys, and the coaches look at you and say, all right, what happened here? And then you're just staring there like a deer in the headlights, no answer, nothing. So you kind of wanted to, it wasn't an excuse. It was just like, the coaches aren't out there too. They're watching the same thing you are. They don't know what the call was. So like, you get a run play and they get movement, and probably there was a tell. You're like, hey, I didn't see this linebacker walked out. They hit us with the stunt. I wasn't ready. We didn't make the right call. Just so you have an answer in those situations, I think was always important, and something I want to do, especially as a center, because you're kind of running the show, and it's your responsibility. So knowing that, having those answers, you don't really watch a lot of the good plays. Like, you don't have all day. You're trying to move on, trying to get going. So, especially the ones that didn't go well, key situations, like, all right, here's what happened. Here was the call we made. Just having some type of answer and accountability for when things didn't go right.
So let's get to the game yesterday, and plenty of ups and downs to go through. The pass blocking was the big story all offseason, but I actually want to start with the run blocking because this was a game a lot of people, myself included, came out and said they're going to run the ball. And it's raining, and it's the first game of the year, and they struggled. Yeah. They struggled to run the football, kind of went away from it late. What did you see in what was supposed to be a strength of this unit? You look at the group they have up front. There's supposed to be a strong run blocking line. Where did that not translate?
Yeah, I would agree on that sentiment. I was at the pregame show. I was very heavy. Like, they're going to come out and run the football, 3 great backs. It just kind of all aligned. The weather, everything, young, 2 rookies on the O-line, Max Crosby. I'm like, they're going to run the football, and they're going to have success running. I believe that.
I think I said 40 runs on my show Sunday morning.
That's what I thought. I thought they probably would have ran it, 40 times and thrown it maybe 30, 25, and it was the complete opposite. Right. So, kind of from some of the notes, it just looked like they were disconnected in the run game. And what I mean by that is not that there was tons of blown assignments. There definitely was some blown assignments, I thought. But, when you're working on a double team, right, like, it's not as easy as just like 2 guys versus 1. Like, guys defeat double teams all the time if the O-line's not connected. We preach a lot, and I assume they're teaching similar things. You want to be hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder, and that kind of creates a forklift wedge to get that guy out of there. So, some of those double teams, especially on the left side, which is disappointing, but also, I hate saying, you expect rookies to make up or mess up, because that's not the case. This is the NFL, and you can't afford that. And look, once you're out, you're not a rookie anymore. Like, once you're playing, like, I remember Bill saying that to me, like, you're not a rookie anymore. Like, you're a starter now. And so I definitely thought that on the left side. And granted, it's two rookies, and they'll get better and they'll work together more. And, I think there was a lot of movement on the O-line during training camp, and I never think that's good. And now that was part of just the situation this football team's in right now. You don't have, I don't know if you looked at it and said, these are our 5 starters right away. And part of that isn't, Vrabel's fault. Like, the roster was what it was when he took over.
Right.
And that's previous regimes going back for a long time. You got one O-lineman that's stuck around since 2020. That's not great for development of a team. So, that is what it is. Just, we talked a little bit too, a big adage of the O-line is take care of the down guy, right? Take care of the D lineman. And what that means is, if you do that, it will probably create a positive play, but that might be 2-3 yards. That won't be the 4 to 8 yard runs. You got to block those linebackers. So that was something I saw, like, a lot of times, like, they get stuck on those down guys, and they weren't getting great movement to begin with those down guys, and then they're not getting off on the linebackers, and that's where you see these 3 2-yard runs. And we always said, for an efficient run game, it had to be 4 yards average a carry. And that was, we had a grade sheet and, all these stats, and that was one I always looked at. We took a lot of pride in the running game. And, and I think people kind of sent me stuff on Twitter, like, why did we get away from the run game, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I think that had a lot to do with it. As a coordinator, when you're sitting there and it's like, all right, it's 1st and 10. If I call this run, is it going to be 2nd and 8? That's not great position. Right. There's not that much difference. 2nd and 6 is a lot different than 2nd and 8, and so I think that that was kind of something, really on the run game, was a little disappointing. Your only explosive real run was that 3rd and 1 where they kind of lined up in a tush push.
Fake tush, but that was pretty cool.
That was a great play design, good little gadget. Give it to a playmaker in space, get him around the edge, but that it's a gadget run.
Right.
And, when a lot of their core runs, that I saw, whether it would be gap, things like that, they just weren't connected. They weren't getting great movement. And, look, you got to give your hat and the flowers to the Raiders. Like, they did a great job. Definitely had some movement on the D line that I saw cause some problems, whether it was like a one-man stunt or, a lot of times you'll see, like, the strong side slant in, the linebacker plays over the top. That's tough, especially in week 1. I know we struggled at that a lot. We saw it a lot in the preseason, though, and that would, help us. I'll never forget, we played the Saints in the preseason one year, and me and Shaq missed one of those calls and movement up front, and Bill let us have it. Same thing in Houston one year in the preseason. So, for as much as they say the preseason is helpful, it is helpful seeing stuff like that. But, I was disappointed in the run game, like I think many people are this morning.
So the step forward, just based off what you said, sounds to me more like it's a continuity thing, a chemistry thing.
I think so.
And as opposed to a schematic issue and they're not designed right.
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone runs very similar plays in the NFL. Like, nobody's really reinventing the wheel, especially in the run game. And, I can speak to this from my early to my late part of the career. Early career, you knew who the starting offensive line was, especially inside. Like, granted, we had, like, Nate leave, Trent come in, but, like, really inside it was Shaq, or Joe, me, Shaq.
Right.
So working with those guys every day, every down. And then you had a guy like Ted Karras who had been there years. Like, it was the seamless transition if Ted came in, and and Ted obviously is a great player. He's gone on to have a great career at Cincinnati. Like, he just needed that opportunity. Right. He wasn't going to play for us, and that's what happened. So, and I think later in my career, when you look at it, like, it was like 22, I played with a lot of guards. 23, I played with so many. That's hard. It's hard when you're not getting those reps with guys. It's not an excuse. It's just hard. Like, I knew how Shaq was going to react if this happened. I knew how Joe was going to react when this happened. And they knew how I was going to react when something happened. And that's what makes a successful offensive line. And so, hopefully that builds and they grow and they kind of get these guys in and, like, these are our 5 and this is what we're doing. And look, there'll obviously be changes at some point, whether it be injuries or, move Wilson inside to center or Brown to center, however they decide to do it, whatever they decide to do to, if they think there's improvement there. But, we'll just see what happens.
We always heard the Dante Scarnecchia idiom, five guys with the same set of eyes.
Yes.
And everybody's seeing it the same way. And to your point earlier, like in training camp, when you move it around, I get you want to find the right group, but you lose some of that.
Yeah.
And so now they're going to have to come back and get that in the run game. And in the pass game, which I didn't think was bad big picture, I think their biggest miscues were in the biggest moments.
Yes.
Which killed them. Obviously, a lot of attention on Will Campbell, top draft pick. I think he was credited for 2 sacks, but there's a lot of context missing there. The first one was a play where Drake May steps up in the pocket. I think it was the first one, if I have it right.
Yes,
Drake May steps up in the pocket, right? And Tyree Wilson's able to come off a block.
That was in the third quarter.
Yeah.
So third quarter, Will Campbell had his guy. He went inside. He stoned him. Drake had pressure, I believe, from Wilson at the left guard, and he had his only escape lane was to go right there. And that's something Drake can do to help. He can learn that. People talk about, like, movement out of quarterbacks. I don't think anybody navigated a pocket like Tom Brady.
No.
And it wasn't running out, doing all these things. Now, granted, Drake has some of that skill set, but, it's knowing how to mitigate problems at the quarterback position and helping out your O-line. And, he'll learn to do that. Like, sometimes it's one step this way, one step this way. It's not 3 steps forward, and so he'll learn to do that. He'll get better at that. But that was the one in the third quarter. And then really the strip sack, which we talked a little bit about. Again, this is where I would hate to make assumptions because you don't know the play call. And, you want to break down the film. You want to give the best answer. But without knowing it, it's hard to put blame on one person or the other. So what I saw, in my opinion, it looked like a chip. And that's a called play, called protection system, and the tackle is expecting that help from a running back. Now, I can remember in 2018 with Trent, when Trent was playing some of his best football, he was not a fan of the chip. Like, he just didn't want it because it messed up his old rhythm, changed his pass set, and that was something, he kind of went back and forth with on the coaches. And I kind of understood it because if you don't expect any help at any time, you will never be let down. Like, it's only your fault versus, if you expect help, and that can change, right? Like, that was a clear chip, but just so everyone understands, you call a chip protection. If the running back's responsibility comes, you're not getting any chip help. So that can, also affect the tackle too, especially a young one. So kind of how I saw it, looked like there should have been a chip. Didn't get a great trip from Mondre, and that puts the tackle at a very bad disadvantage. If there was not a chip called, it looked like Mondre was trying to afford help, which running backs will do. And if that's the case, then obviously that's more on Will. And for the most part, I didn't come away thinking that the pass block lost them the game. I thought there was other areas from an offensive standpoint that really affected the game versus, like, man, they couldn't pass block. I was more disappointed in the run game performance than I was the pass blocking performance.
I'm with you. And then the other big thing that came up, and you'd mentioned it before we were on the air, was some of the situational stuff. especially at the end of the first half and then at the end of the game.
Yeah. So, we'll go to the first half, right? So, into the first half, Patriots get the ball at halftime. And, you look in the league, there's not a lot of blowout wins, right? Like,
right.
A 7-point win's a good win in the NFL. That's why it's the best product of sport there is. They're just, these games are so close, they're so tight. Certain situations are huge. And that's something we always talked about, which I know they're talking about too. It's not like Mike Vrabel does it and
Right.
Josh McDaniels don't understand that situation. That situation's been covered. Now, the execution was really bad. So, into the first half, got a chance to go down, get some type of points, get the ball at half, start fast, get points. Those swings can become huge, even if it's 2 field goals. Granted, that's not great. It's not what you're looking for, but it's still, you got 6 points before they ever touch the ball. Now,
6 points in a game, you lose by 7, you're trying to go down and get a field goal late, changes a lot.
Yeah. So, but if you really, you get, let's draw it up perfectly, 14-point swing without them touching the ball is an amazing thing. And that rarely happens, but like a 10 or 7, 6-point swing, like that's huge in these close games. And that was a situation where I just was disappointed. We had 3rd and 1 into the second quarter. You're at midfield. A lot of times we talk about, people kind of forget about the backside of run plays, right? They're kind of like, oh, it's the back. The backside is especially on these outside zones or outside tosses, they are the most key blocks at times, because a lot of times it's easier to get the play started. Those backside blocks become the touchdowns, the big runs. They're the hero blocks, and they're the hardest blocks because most of the times on the backside, you're going to be out leveraged, whether it's a linebacker or D lineman on the inside of you. So you're going to be out leveraged. They're the hardest and most important blocks. And that was really, the toss started, there was a hole, and, we don't cut off the backside linebacker. He makes the stop, and, it's, kills the drive. And then at the end of the game, it's, kind of end of the game, trying to score. I got my notes here,
it's good.
My analyzing notes here. There's 4 minutes left. It's 4th and 5, and you false start midfield. And that was Campbell on the false start. Now, what I don't know, which I'm interested in, is if there was a play called or if it was a dummy call. Because what you can do on 4th and 5, obviously, is try to draw them off sides, get a secondary play called. I really hope that wasn't the case. I hope they had a play call, and what you would do sometimes would have a play call, dummy call. So go through the whole dummy snap count, right? Josh has relayed. We're doing however they call their dummy snap count. We're doing that, and then we're going to this play. Because it's kind of best of both worlds. Could draw them off sides, hit a shot. Now you got a free play. It's going to be 1st down or 4th and inches, depending on how 4th and 5 it was. And, and then if not, you've got your play called. So you would hope that there was a play call. They were going through a dummy cadence. But those two situations, we always said in key situations, you need your best football when it counts the most. And I just didn't think they had their best football when it counted the most. And, that's something hopefully we'll learn from, we'll move on, and, they'll put something together here, moving forward.
What'd you make of the decision to ultimately punt there once they get to 4th and 10? And do you think if it is a dummy call on 4th and 5, they were maybe planning on punting anyway?
I don't think they were planning on punting the whole time.
Okay.
I think the decision at that point, how I would call it probably if I was the coach, 4th and 5 goes to 4th and 10. 4th and 10's hard. 3rd and 10's hard. 3rd and 5 is manageable. 4th and 5 is manageable. Those routes are a lot easier. The concepts you can run, what the defense has to defend. I think just looking at it, 4th and 10, punt, try to get the, pin them deep, get the ball back. Because if you go for it, there, you're at midfield, their side of the 50, good field goal kicker on the other team. Obviously, field goal ends the game. So punt, hopefully your defense makes a play, try to get the ball back at midfield, score a touchdown, onside kick, field goal, push it to overtime. So that was, I thought, the decision on that and the right one.
All right, before we wrap it up here, Pat's going down to Miami next week. The term House of Horrors has been used. It's been tough down there. I mean, take us through it. September in Miami. It's obviously hot, but what makes that such a tough matchup?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough place to play. I mean, it's hot. But you look at it when they come up to the weather in December, it's hard on them. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword for that team and teams like us. Didn't watch a lot of that game. I'll probably watch it at some point this week. Didn't look good for Miami.
So that's the other thing I wanted to ask you. And you, Tyreek Hill, freaking out on the sideline, and Mike McDaniel. There's been some questions about where he's at with Tua and Tyreek Hill. Is that something going into the game? You guys watch the film. You study the opponent in that sense. Do you guys kind of know? And I know it's trying to block out the noise, so it's. I'm not sure how you would categorize this, but hey, this team's maybe mentally not where they need to be right now.
Yeah.
And it's tough in that building. Do you know that going in?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that's like when you look at it as a player, you're like, if we can get up and make them play the hard, any teams that's hard to play for, but like you look at like a team like Buffalo and the Ravens last night.
Yeah.
Like Buffalo's a team that's never out of it. They've got a good foundation, good culture, and they're able to overcome situations like that. You look at this Miami team right now as a player, you're like, if we make it hard on them, they could fold, and I think that's a characteristic of Miami in general.
Okay.
Not general, but just the last few years, you watch them.
Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, when that offense is rolling, it's hard to stop. Now, when you make that offense have to, be productive down after down, don't give up the big plays, to Waddle, Hill, HN. I know he's kind of banged up, but like if you made it hard on that offense and don't allow the big plays, it's hard for them to continuously drive the ball and put together those big drives. So, I think as a player, that. And like if we can go out there, make it hard, play the game how we want to play, make them play catch up, it's going to be a lot harder on them, wherever they're at inside that locker room, you just know you got to put the pressure on them. So as a player, I'd be excited to go play a team like that coming off of this loss. Let's go down there. Let's rebound. Let's go, kick their ass, feel good about ourselves, right this ship, and move forward.
He's David Andrews. You can check him out on Zolak and Bertrand on Mondays. Patriots pregame as well. Man, this was awesome. I was looking forward before it anyway, but really looking forward to getting to do this every week with you, man.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me, brother.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody. For more Patriots Hub Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Sports Hub YouTube channel. For David Andrews, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in.